You don't hear like 70% of pyramid projects failed, do you?
Failed in the first year.
In the first year, exactly. Now, let me start off. Let me frame some up for you guys, right? This is the challenge, right? So, current delivery of change in a business, in an enterprise, in a sizable organization, right? You've got kind of two schools of thought. You've got the traditional, the Prince 2, your project managery, waterfall-y lot, right? Where you spend your entire life for months doing a detailed project plan. You immediately get into execution and it's screwed, right? And it's like then you constantly like have to fudge the plan or report on the plan, and there's all that. And then there's the other side of the fence, which is like the kind of the bad agile, let's call it, Ali, right? The bad agile brigade that are kind of, no, we have no plan. We just jump into the thing, and we don't hold to dates, we don't hold to budgets, we don't hold to anything else, and we just do random shit, really. And that's. Now, what I was thinking is, like, if you were back in the 3000 BCs or whenever pyramids were about, and I really hope I'm like about that sort of time, but I'm sure they didn't have either approach, and they got some serious like pyramids built. Now, I appreciate that they had slaves, whips, and lots of stuff like that, but they delivered some kind of complex engineering in the middle of a desert quite effectively. You don't hear like 70% of pyramid projects failed, do you?
Failed in the first year.
In the first year, exactly. You don't.
Well, they did take 20 odd years to be built, so I'll say they probably had a long. I wouldn't want to see their Gantt chart. Let's put it this way.
You might not think they did. I don't think they came with like your weekly 4-box report and gone, okay, we laid 4 bricks this week, and like next week we're going to lay another 4, and we're currently green for human labour.
Yeah.
We're
How
okay
mitigate the
bricks,
risks? Yeah.
but we're a bit low on water. I don't know. There seems to be a more natural way that is just like our obsession with certainty nowadays kind of kills things, and then the other side of the coin is our obsession with agility.
Yep. But I think you just said it there, is the obsession with the certainty, because the world we live in right now is a lot more uncertain than obviously if you build the first pyramid, then yes, you would have had lots of uncertainties. You might have thought, oh, this is going to take me 2 years, and then end up with 5 years. But as they built more of them, and they were building quite a lot of them, again, I'm not an archaeologist. I don't take this as a. I'm sure if you Google it, it probably comes up with a different answer. But I'm thinking that because they built so many of them already, they kind of knew the process, and they kind of knew how long it takes.
Yeah, but they had a first one,
number of people.
And I don't think the first one took 100 years.
No.
Because they were built with one person in mind to put in it, I think, or them and their family.
Yes. And they also build smaller ones as well. So the ones the big ones that you see on their paper money in Egypt, or or the posters, they came way later. They were building small ones. They have hundreds of pyramids all over the place for different kings and queens, and so
pharaohs and pharaohesses, or whatever they were called.
So it wasn't just So I think they had previous experience building them, so they kind of knew what they're building and how long roughly something takes. But with most agile or even non-agile work that we have is like, oh, you got this budget, and and I'm pretty sure the Egyptian kings probably didn't have a budget. They were just like, build it.
I don't know. I reckon they had like some treasury kind of like stash where they go, we'll have this to maintain the army and this much to maintain. They wouldn't like endless slaves and endless time.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure they would have found the money somehow, if that makes sense. But by an organization where you're only limited to a certain amount, and I guess the obsession comes in is because you don't want to go over the budget, because, oh my God, you're going to... Well, it's going to get too big. And
that's the thing.
It's the iron triangle, right?
If you don't go over the budget, right? If you go over the budget, you risk not paying your people. You risk not paying your suppliers. You risk not having a business. So it's an imperative to kind of at least have a good idea of what it's going to cost you. I think.
I mean, that's why experimentation comes in. That's what's so important to experiment your ideas and get feedback, and then experiment further, feedback, experiment further, feedback, until you get to a stage where you kind of roughly know what you're building, where the value is, where the customer is going to get the most value, because you've been constantly talking to your customer. And like traditional software development, that's how I started. I remember when we were rewriting this payment system, they said 6 months. It's going to take 6 months to do it. The people who estimated the 6 months were using a different language to estimate than the language they decided to write in. They were using Uniface.
Right.
And they moved to Java in the middle of it. So moving from Uniface to Java, because Java was much easier to find people to do the Uniface development. So it took 2.5 years.
Wow.
In total to actually rewrite it all, because they didn't think about how complex this Java is going to be compared to what they had. So that's also is important, where you get the right people in the room when you're doing all these guesstimations and estimations. And so and obviously there was no experimentation. You just build the whole thing and then you release, even if it's even if it's the wrong product, you just have more change requests. We basically had a development deadline that we had to release the product on, and then we had change requests every month for the next year, because there was so much being discovered as they were building it, but they couldn't obviously do it, add it to the product. They had to wait for the change request. They had to wait for the board to agree on the change request. They had this whole ridiculous process in place where if you wanted the change, it will take you 6 months. Where when I discovered Agile, they were doing fewer big bang releases, but they were doing more releases more often to get feedback. The feedback is valuable because then you can change. I mean, this is what I always tell people. Agility isn't faster. It's not supposed to be. It's not about speed. Agility is about delivering the right product. It's about the right value, identifying the value earlier. So if you're let's say if you have 100 houses you need to build with Agile versus 100 houses you need to build with Waterfall, it's going to take you about the same. The difference is when you build, let's say, 5 houses, you realize they actually need to be 3 bedrooms instead of 2 bedrooms. You're much quicker to change it and change your plan around it, versus you build 100 houses and then you realize you need to build 3-bedroom houses instead of 2-bedroom houses. Now you have to destroy them all,
add extensions,
or add extensions, so it costs you more, or it takes longer. So when I hear people talking about speed because of agility, no, it has nothing to do with speed. I mean, a byproduct of it could be speedier, because the speed you gain is the fact that the feedback you get will help you not build 100 houses, because you only needed 50, because you only have 50 families to house. I mean, that will save you 50. You can probably build in half the time, because what happens is, because you're constantly talking to the customer, you're constantly getting feedback, you realize the requirements change as you build it.
I think, like you say, that everyone wants certainty now. I think people just lurch from one like buzzword to another without, like you explained it very eloquently, I think, Ali. But people like launch from one thing to another. So people are like, I've heard about Power Apps. I want to use Power App because I've heard it's going to be great. I want to use Agile in this project because I've heard it's better than so and so. Whereas like without really understanding like the nuances or like the meaning behind it, like, well, actually, it could be beneficial if you used it in this way. You just reminded me of like I was on an IT project which didn't turn out particularly well, where the vendor was like trying to build stuff in the background that actually we thought they'd already got and they'd sold us. So then they were like trying to fix it. But they were like, oh, we run Agile, so we release it every 8 weeks, and that's Agile. It's like, well, but you're releasing stuff that breaks other stuff, and you haven't done any testing, and we're supposed to be getting live with this thing. And if you carry on doing that, we're not able to run the business. It's like, well, that's Agile. It's like, I don't think it is. I'm pretty sure it's not just an excuse for breaking stuff.
That's fragile, not agile.
Yeah.
You still have
so they got this buzzword. It's like then they ramped out loads of testing. So we need to get all these test scripts and automate them. I was like, well, cool, that's better. But you're still like, you haven't built what we've asked you to do, and we can't work it until it's there. And then when it is there, you can't break it. So from the customer's point of view, I don't give a flying shite whether you call it Agile or Waterfall, whatever. You've got this. I want it to work like this. And until we get to that, but like after that, you want to do improvements, cool. Then we can like have a backlog and work on it and stuff. But until that point, I've got zero care about how you get to that point. You just need a date that we're going to go and manage to that. But it's like, it seems like it's one or the other, or, you know, this buzzword and that. We're not really understanding all the nuances behind each bit about when to use it.
Yeah, half the time, I don't know about. I mean, I'm sure Steve does the same thing. Half the time, you have to save the customer from themselves, because what they actually what they want. I mean, when I say customer, I mean I'm talking about like the organization from themselves.
Yeah.
Is because they're building something that the customer hasn't asked. Is because you're thinking this is what the customer wants, but have you actually talked to the customer? Have you got the feedback? Have you got, it?
Yeah, can't agree more.
Agility.
Sorry? So I can't agree more. I'll give you an example. Like project I'm doing at the moment, I'm replacing like the timesheet system for the recruiter I'm working in, right? Now, and it's not just the customer, right? It's the project team saving the project team for themselves. So yesterday I was off doing like la-di-da ops board meetings and things like that, as I do. And I gave a mission to my team to plan out how we're going to do all this thing, right? And they came up with a plan that said, right, we're going to align all the data, make sure all the data's right. Then we're going to then implement the system. Then we're going to test the system. Then we're going to do the rollout and all this sort of stuff. And I was going, okay. So at what point are we getting the thing in the customer's hand so that they can first see it and go, no, that's not a swing. That's like, I don't know, a step ladder, right? You know what I mean? That another visual. But it's just like that. And I think it's both customer and team that got to get in this way, that there's a hybrid between, you need some level of certainty, some level of estimation of how long and how much something will cost. But it's all about getting it to the customer quick. And that's the one Agile, I don't know, I get this wrong, either a principle or a rule, but the one that get it to the person and talk about it. Go, is that what what are the problems with this thing? And then sort those things. That's the lesson for project delivery for me. Get it to the person as soon as you can. But we don't like doing that. What I think. They go, that's a load of shit. That's terrible. That's not what I want. That's why I believe week 2.
Yeah, that's why I believe good organizations have really good product team, because you could have the best development team in the world, but if the product that's been designed or agreed upon and being tested with the customers and between when they're talking to both the customer and the organization where they represented the business, the product team, they will take, if you take crap to the development team, they're going to build you crap. You want good, clear requirements that's going to add value that the development team can pick up and work with it. This is why when I go to an organization, I spend most of my time with the product team, because that is the key area that needs to, once they get that bit right, you can focus on having amazing developers, working with them and making sure that they're building the right thing. But until you have that in the middle working well, you could end up with a product that it doesn't delight anyone, neither the customer or the people building it.
Yeah. One of the challenges, maybe to come back to what you think on this, Gav, right, is I think that it's about relationships. I think people are so fragile. We get so invested in our thing. We're so scared of being told we're doing the wrong thing or in the wrong way, that we're averse to failure. We're averse to negative criticism. We take it personally. The number of times that people say, I've offended them. And I'm naturally, I must be a little bit like that, but it's not about me offending you. It's you choosing to take offense at the thing that's been, if I put you two in a room, you wouldn't be half as offended by, the stuff that other people might get offended by. And I think that's endemic throughout work. It's like people are just precious and just snowflakey and fragile, and what we do is we then go into a little room and spend loads of effort making something as perfect as we possibly can that doesn't stand any criticism. Whereas if you kind of go, okay, here's my harebrained idea, what do you think? And they go, no, all right, Okay, back. Here's my next hairbrain. Oh, a bit more like that one. And you go, okay, what are you? Do you know what I mean? It's like that's the way we need to get better at work, showing our workings out and getting people to a point where they feel that they can criticize or critique or help you build it. Not that it's already fully formed and nearly perfect. I don't think we do that enough either.
Well, safety, right? You want to have that safe environment. You want to build that trust. Going back to the 5 dysfunctions of a team.
Yeah.
You want to build that. You want to have that trust so people feel comfortable to be able to be vulnerable or come up, be able to have openness and be able to challenge things.
Yeah, one thing that again, getting back to accounting college, which not done for 30 odd years, so it's odd to think of it now a couple of times in the same hour. But like, I've never seen anyone else do it, really. I guess it's like it might have been reborn as design thinking or another buzzword that is an old thing reimagined. But like, just to stop like people feeling criticised, or like I've come up with an idea and someone's like, I don't know, it's going to work. You're like, oh, you haven't thought of anything, mate. It's like just divorce each stage and just say like, look, this bit of like 10 minutes, everyone come up with the ideas and just write them down the board. Doesn't matter if they're terrible. And then like the next 10 minutes is like, well, for every idea, don't hear any criticism. Tell me what would need to be true for that to work. And it might be like, because like no idea is a terrible idea, apart from maybe your boss in the next office. That might be a bad idea. There's no bad idea. So it's like, well, tell me what would need to be true for that to work. And then you're like, well, that one then isn't a good idea because look at the amount of resource we need to make that work. Or this one isn't a good idea because actually we need to, we haven't got the market to do that one. Or this one isn't a good idea because actually no one wants a triangular pint glass, which was actually a real idea. Putting beer in a pouch, that's not a good idea. But then that might be like, other ideas flow off those. So you don't want to kill any ideas because then someone's like scared of saying something or whatever. Or it might just trigger something. It's like, oh yeah, I've thought of, because innovation in FMCG is like putting the same stuff in a different container. So like, pet food is now in a pouch rather than in a can. It's like, well, that's an amazing innovation that's leading the market. But like, no one would have thought of that if you hadn't, like, if you've killed the triangular pint glass idea, maybe no one would have thought of that. So, and then like, then you can then filter down on which ones are which ones are going to be a goer. And I've never seen anyone, very rarely, apart from like marketing events or some things where they will like gather some feedback from the business, I don't see that sort of, rules in the right word, like the culture of just like, let's just all be open and not shoot each other down. I don't often see that in like normal meetings. That I think a lot of meetings could benefit from just having those sort of like guidelines there. Look, we're all at work to have a bit of fun. We're going to need to come up with some ideas. This is how we're going to do it. Let's go without being offended or.
It comes again from the top. This is why the top of organisations are so important. We're trained to like support your boss's stupid idea.